And welcome in this session with Board of a Feather. And welcome and thank you to be present here in this session, which is called Valorization of Data and Software in the Open Science World. I would like to present the three speakers of this session. But yes. There is a I haven't my notes on the computer. Doesn't appear.
No.
No. So I have to read my notes because and I would like to apologize. My English is not so fluent like yours, I think. And so welcome to this Board of a Feather and on this subject. Yes, we are interested to submit to RDA community an opening reflection on the tensions that appears nowadays between different missions and public scientific institutions. These tensions are essentially coming from the different ways to enforce intellectual property law, in particular in Europe. It is perhaps an exclusive European question, but it might be a larger question which concerns also other countries. We will be interested to share our first reflections and discuss with you on these questions to verify if there is here a relevant question or not. I'm not so... Thank you. So to present this BoF, I have gathered three stakeholders that I would like to thank and that I would like to present you. First of all, Mrs. Stephanie Kuss will speak by video conference for 10 minutes to present the missions and work of her network. Stephanie is a director of the Curie network in France, which is composed of numerous persons who are operating the transfer of research results into innovations. Then, as senior lecturer in IP/IT law at the University of Montpellier, I will have the pleasure to present you the sticking points of this problematic valorization versus open science. And at last, Mrs. Hilary Ananao, Secretary General of RDA, will present the RDA Public-Private Partnership Framework. So I propose to hear now Stephanie Kuss. She is online and she will speak here from France.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I need a little time to share my screen. Screen that you should see now. Okay, so I'm here because I'm working for the Curie network, like Agnès said. The Curie network is a French association for academic research valorization. We've been created more than 30 years ago, and our members are universities who were our founders, but also public research organization, hospitals, and engineer schools. There are more than 200 of them in the Curie network, and they represent 3,000 people. Those people's daily job is to make valorization of academic research. But to understand a little bit more, we need to discuss about what is valorization. I wrote a definition on the screen, which is coming from le Conseil national d'évaluation de l'enseignement supérieur in France. And it can be defined like this. Valorization of public research is the way to make research results, research knowledge, and research skills usable or marketable. And like Agnès said, you can see two ways to make valorization. The first one she talked about this one is technology transfer or knowledge transfer, and it's a way to go from academic research to users, and it can be scaled in 4 parts: sourcing, IP protection, development, and sale. And it goes to companies, SMEs, and startups. And it is one way to make knowledge and technology usable for end users. And the other way to make valorization is the partnerships, and but this is not the main subject of what we are going to talk about today. So if we stand that valorization is about knowledge and technology transfer, we can ask ourselves, who does valorization? In France and in Europe and all around the world, it's the same. There are valorization officers, there are expert practitioners of valorization, and they stand in between researchers and companies and end users. And who are they working for? They work for academic research providers, which are our members, and like I said, university, hospitals, public research organizations, and engineer schools. In France, it represents 100,000 researchers and PhD students, and these are the people who produce the academic knowledge, as you should know. What do they produce? Because we need to, if we want to discuss further about the interest of thinking about open science and valorization, we need to know where we stand. In a year, research potential powered by valorization produce 14,000 contracts with companies. More than 1,000 research results are sourced every year. 4,500 patents are issued each year in France, and more than 200 new startups are created. Those figures are coming from a study that we are providing in Réseau Curie. So these are French numbers, but you can find European numbers, figures, sorry, through ASTP, which is the European Knowledge Transfer Association. And practically, what does that mean? Which innovations are coming out of labs thanks to valorization? I selected a few of them. I wanted to show you that valorization can intervene in many fields. So we are used to say that valorization feeds, and I gave you an example of a hyper energetic bread for people who have for senior people. Valorization cues through example like tree frog produce stem cells to manufacture organs. Valorization can protect with some, for example, marine bacteria to manufacture bioplastics. It also entertains. Sport dynamics is an application to optimize the game for professional soccer teams. And it also educates with Caligo, which is a notebook that makes you and especially people who have a problem to write again. But let's come back to my little scheme, and especially on this part, which is intellectual property protection. Why do I need to say a little bit more about that? You will understand the following slide, because to make valorization, you will have understood that you need to get IP, and I come back to my examples, and what I wanted to show you is that there are many ways of protecting IP and exploiting it. And so for gene nutrition, they used patents as for tree frog and as for marine bacteria. But for sport dynamics, the IP is based on software, and for Caligo, the IP is based on software and know-how. Why am I talking about IP? It is because the IP is the key for valorization practitioner officers to make their job. And valorization officers, practitioners keep telling researchers not to publish before protecting IP. And now, from Europe and from French government comes open science. You can easily understand that valorization practitioners, valorization officers keep telling themselves, how will I do my job if open science becomes the new rule? So the question is it a real dilemma, or can we find together solutions? And this is what our mission is about. And I will let Agnès explain this mission a little further. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, for this presentation. I would like now to expose you some terms of our mission for the French ministry and the term of the problematic that we signified by valorization of data and software in the open science world. The idea to work on these topics came from the research program I have been working on since 17, that called Common Data, our Research Data Scientific Commons, with the University of Montpellier, with the Agropolis Foundation and the Maison des Sciences de l'Homme of Montpellier. This research led to the writing of a book on research data law, like you can see here on the slide, and the creation of a diploma entitled Scientific Data Management, which enters in his fourth year this September. Research data management analysis is considered in terms of the data life cycle. And in the discourse of open science, the end of the data life cycle is materialized by the operation of data reuse. You all know this cycle. The aim of open science is to enable to reuse by other people, researchers, or companies, or associations. Open science is now a mission in France of public research institutions. It has been enshrined in law since 2013. Public institutions must make scientific data available by favoring open standards. The European Code of Conduct for Research also contains these rules. However, the rules contain another mission, which is to promote the results of scientific research, like Stephanie presented. This development is carried out through technology transfer operations and is based on legal mechanism of intellectual property or trade secrets. The knowledge valorization of research results is an activity that remains quite far from that of the open science activity. These are missions that seem to be opposed. Indeed, the reuse of data must be free and open, whereas the valorization of research is an economic operation that encourages private companies to invest in public research. These are cases of public-private partnerships. This question that then arises is the following. In public-private partnerships, research situations, how can the two missions interact? But the question is this articulation necessary? Thus, on the one hand, we would have the economic and legal mechanism to disseminate data freely when the research is public. And on the other hand, the economic and legal mechanisms to make the most of it when the research is private. What happens to the data in the case of public-private partnership research? For example, in France, the legislator has adopted the following principle. When more than 50% of research is financed by public funding, the data must be considered freely reusable if they have been disseminated by researchers, laboratories, or institutions. How can the rules of open science be articulated with those of knowledge valorization? That's the question, which is a legal question. The general principle adopted by the European Commission is open as possible, as closed as necessary. The rule lays down the principle of openness and an exception of closure. This presupposes that we know how to identify cases of closure. A few examples can be mentioned. The occurrences are known, well known. There are 5 of them: intellectual property rights, trade secrets, personal data, data from biodiversity, research governed by the Nagoya Protocol, and data on which the rights have been transferred to a scientific publisher. This tension has also been noted by the European Commission, which has commissioned a report on the subject in 2022. Several recommendations were made, such as reflecting on the adaptation of the TDM exception that was adopted in 2019 European directive, or to rethink the rules set out by the Court of Justice of the European Union on hyperlinks, or to draw inspiration from the good practices existing in institutions in the articulation between open science and the promotion of research. Three principal recommendations are here on this slide, but the question is, what are the good practices? And are the practices developed yet or not? What are these good practices? During my research, I asked myself this question, and I then proposed to the Ministry of Higher Education and Research in France to work on this question. So we have initiated a mission to create a dialogue, a discussion between the two missions, which are supported and implemented by different services and people in parallel. However, researchers are at the center of these two injunctions, often with questions and doubts about what they can open and what they should close. We propose to the Curie network to work with lawyers who work in public research institutions. We organized several working sessions with a group of people motivated to integrate the rules of open science into their practices. So, like Stephanie said, it is a work in progress this year. Hereafter and beyond that, it would be necessary to think in a global and uniform way about a law for scientific research by rethinking in a specific way the rules relating to copyright or database law, for example. So, thank you for your attention. So I changed the session, the running session, and you can speak now, Hilary, and then we have some questions in discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so okay, so this is interesting because we were asked to share our experience because the Research Data Alliance of the concept and the framework within which we work. So I'm going to give you the example of the public-private partnership aspect, but it ties quite a lot with the challenges that are going around, and it's our perspective, of course, and our direct experience. I know many of you know what the Research Data Alliance is, but it's quite important. In fact, this part more than anything, the vision, the mission, and the guiding principles to contextualize the situation for this public-private partnership. So we were born or set up with this vision, you know, so it's all, funnily enough, when the Research Data Alliance was founded, the words open science were never, you know, in any of the documents or anything, but clearly we have quite a large role to play in that. And the mission is, of course, yes, the social aspect, but in this particular context, the technical part and these solutions that are delivered, you know, collectively generated by the community, by volunteers, and then with which we try to preserve them within these guiding principles. And I have to say, the first thing is possibly that the guiding principles of the Research Data Alliance, I'm not sure the founders realized that, but they were, and the processes that the RDA works under were really quite well thought out and have stood the test of time, and they're very helpful for an organization like ours, which is completely open, and what you're trying to do is, you know, reduce the duplication of efforts, make everything open, accelerate science and data-driven research. So with those missions in mind, everything should be open, everything should be inclusive. We're trying to harmonize. And of course, the last one is the no profit and technology neutral. In that particular guiding principle is important in the sense of when the Research Data Alliance outputs that the community deliver, now under the umbrella and with the brand, if you like, of the Research Data Alliance. First of all, there's no IP. Yeah? They're owned by everybody. Everybody can have them. We do ask that they be cited. We ask that they be deposited, the guidelines, the standards, whatever comes out, with, you know, a reference to them, but that doesn't always happen either. But what is most important is that the outputs should not be technology. There should be no technology lock-in. That does not mean, by the way, that afterwards you cannot go on to perhaps take up some of the outputs and whatever they may be, and then, of course, create, if you like, a technology lock-in scenario around them. But that is where we stand, if you like, as RDA. Now, these are the three main mechanisms that we do the work through. Okay, and clearly the first one is the one I'm going to give the example about, and it's the one that we built this framework around. Why? Because the working groups are the things that are the closest, if you like, to standards, or the closest to pieces of software, or, you know, running codes, or even, you know, with data sets and all these different things. They are, in fact, they go through a process that's like a standardization process. So the concept is that there's something there that can be taken up, that can be implemented, that could, if you like, be valorized in the terminology that we're using. So that brings me to the context of the framework. The Research Data Alliance obviously is a multi-stakeholder organization. If we really want to make sure that we do bring these solutions and we, you know, do all this enabling to resolve the grand challenges of society, to do some of the things that we heard about this morning at the opening session around all the different data formats and making everything interoperable, well, then we need to include all the stakeholders in our community. And the Research Data Alliance, being a bottom-up organization, if you look at the statistics of our membership, has mainly been academic and research. And that's really who we are, because we talk about research data. So our main, if you like, stakeholders or target audience are academia and research, but we must have the funders, we must have the policymakers, we must have the publishers, we must have all the different stakeholders, and we also need the private sector, because our belief is that actually many of these things, there's a collective responsibility around them. So in our strategic plan for 2020 to 2023, we had this particular area of activity that RDA should look into supporting and finding ways to work with the private sector. We also have an issue around financial sustainability. RDA is we receive money through organization membership, but we're not an international organization. We don't have stock on the stock market. And every year we strive and try to, you know, get our staff, pay our staff and move on. Okay. So like many of these soft infrastructures, we have serious financial sustainability challenges. And we did a big piece of work around sustainability in 2021. And therefore, one of the things we were asked, or the council, who's my board of directors, tasked me to do, were to look into funding streams that could help this, if you know, that could support, but at the same time preserve this openness. So think about that, the challenge. You know, this is what RDA does. I can't just invent some sort of commercial line, because we want to preserve those guidelines. We want to preserve the way in which the community works, and we especially want to preserve that all the outputs are open. So what we came up with was a framework of sponsorship, if you like. So this was the easiest way to do it. And I'll come to the ups and downs of this afterwards. But so we thought long and hard about how this could be done. We have the guiding principles. We have a code of conduct as well. How can we do these this activity? So we maintain the processes that we have. Absolutely. But what we do is we build in a facilitation. So our commercial or our private sector organization will partner with us to get an independent person actually to facilitate, if you like, the work. Now, I'm assuming most of you, I see many faces that I know, but maybe some of you do not know how the Research Data Alliance works, but everybody who does the work in RDA are volunteers. Yes, it's a volunteer community. And you really need these passionate volunteers with time on their hands to, make sure that the working group does all the jobs. So we thought if we were able to do the facilitation of those groups, increase and the if you like the visibility of the work, support in trying to get all that sort of, and I don't want to diminish what my colleague Connie Clare, the community development manager, is doing, but this more logistical part around it that is really important, but at the same time takes away from the intellectual property and intellectual knowledge exchange that the members of the group are there to sort of, if you like, to do. So we launched this framework, and I launched the framework, and shortly afterwards we started with our first collaboration. I'll move on to that so you can see. So our collaboration was with Oracle for Research. Yes, and Oracle for Research, of course, are a well-known large enterprise, commercial enterprise. And we had discussed at length with them. I had the agreement approved by the highest board in the Research Data Alliance, and that we would do these two different pieces of work. And so we launched them. They are actually ongoing now. I am a full believer in this. So, I mean, as I'm speaking and I'm supporting, if you like, from the Research Data Alliance perspective, I see all the value in it. Yes. I mean, it really, we see the difference because things are working at a faster pace. And the ups are that the volunteer group can actually do what they set out to do. So if Agnes and Stephanie and others of you in the room decide that you want to further this particular piece of work, then we need people who will help to, take it forward. And I mean, as long as the person is independent, so it's not an Oracle staff member that's doing it, they weren't interested in that anyway. So we have this professional work. And of course, the financial support for RDA, I cannot deny that is, I mean, we need to find means of funding ourselves. But the downs have been interesting. And we said it would be an experiment. The perceptions I've had some quite significant pushback about it. I've had lots of interactions with the members, and I'm grateful to them for that, because you need to understand. But there is, of course, this ongoing culture that the big giants, the big tech people, and they just want what they want. And even some of my own council said, well, they must, what are they getting out of it? What are they getting? Of course, they're getting the stamp of saying that they're working with an open community. Yes, and it's change for them and a big chunk of money for us. Yes, I can pay a staff member with it. But of course, a lot of the people were saying, yes, but this is volunteer work. So you're now selling it, or, and you're giving this knowledge to commercial organizations. So at the end of the day, in one particularly in the mapping, yes, group, the output of that is actually a database. Yes, it's based on a database on the open Oracle Cloud. But of course, we've agreed that, yes, we've agreed that it will be open. They will power it, we will host it, and it's owned by the community. And we have a contract in place. I'm not sure what Agnes might think about the contract. As a lawyer, I might give it to you to see. But we did think about all of those things. So there are ups and downs, and there are tensions about it. And to conclude, I think that, my opinion, I represent an organization that the core, openness is in our DNA. Yes. And that is what we try to promote and to think. With all the challenges I appreciate that are around it. Of course, it's everyone's concern, but there's also many benefits for others. I think that it is, there's a risk and there's a responsibility, but it is a sharing exercise on both sides. And I would finally say that I know it's challenging and things. I'm also, you know, putting frameworks and contracts around, and we're talking here about something slightly different than patents and what were the examples that Stephanie showed. But I think that it should be handled with care, but it should be handled. Because if we don't experiment with these type of things and we don't work around and find use cases that will help, then what is the cost of not doing it? What is going to happen? Yeah. So, I mean, this, you know, the valorization officer with their hand in her hair, it's true. What do we risk? We risk, I think, quite a significant amount. So that is the conclusion of our experience in working with a very open community who, you know, are not, I would say, always comfortable more than anything. I think it's a fear, it's change, it's fear, and it's not knowing what the thing is, but not always comfortable about working with commercial, because the concept and the perception is that they are going to make profit and we're going to lose. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary, for this very clear presentation of this case, this use case, perhaps of RDA. RDA work on with commercial interests. Is that possible to have my presentation back? I
is open. Yeah, I didn't close it. I don't know how you this is yours. Yeah. You want to go on here?
Yeah, the last one.
And then he says, what do you do? That's fine.
So, like I said, we have changed a little bit the session running and to make these 3 presentations and then to have the discussions with you. So what we propose is to reflect, to have an analysis or testimony of what happens in your country. What is does the subject exist in your country? Is this subject analyzed? What conclusions, etc. And then, if you're interested of this on this subject, we can pursue to next steps and reflect together what to do, what to promote, and then a larger discussion if you want. So you have now you can speak and say what. With a microphone, yes, for the registering.
Well, I'm not so far from you, Magidoncy from France. And thank you for all the presentations first, and also for this initiative. So I don't know if you're using of the kind of work that is done at a facility like Soleil, but there is a place where software developers meet researchers, if I really summarize the schema. You showed the requirements now coming from the Ministry of Research to go towards open science, and which sometimes conflicts with the researchers and the way their work is valorized. Our facility is, just to a very rapid summary, receives almost 5,000 researchers per year. They come from all over the world. And this organization is driven by the CNRS. So it's a public organization. We started facing these kinds of topics, open data, open science, since 5 years ago, because all the organization, as you may know, is obliged to have a data policy where they state that they will publish all the data coming from publicly funded projects. Now I come to what you are saying. Concretely, that means that we started already to set up data catalogs and ways to publish data. We are registered with DataSite, and we are supposed since next year to start publishing data that are produced at our facility. The point is that even our scientists who are working at Soleil, for example, are a bit concerned with this because they tell us researchers when they come to Soleil, sometimes they develop software that they don't want to publish because they think it's part of their research and they must wait until it's IP protected or whatever else. But the problem is that we are obliged to give them a DMP, data management plan, where they will sign that they will publish. So I'm happy with this initiative, but I think we can work together. In this way, you can be an intermediate for us. We are not facing the researchers directly and telling them, you must publish, because they come from a variety of disciplines where in general they are not aware of that. And the only things we tell them now is there are a lot of initiatives to set up some kind of valorization through, say, citation and so on, but it's still a theory for them because it's not applied now. This is a summary of our kind of work, and just to say that I'm happy with the initiative, and I think we've got to try to help you have links with these kind of facilities because we are already doing things around open data and open science.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to not to answer because that was not a question, but to observing is to say that open science for me as lawyer is a sort of method to manage data and not to open all the data or all the softwares on. It has been we have to think with a reasonable management way. So.
Yes, thank you for your presentations, all of them. I'm Anne Cambron-Thompson. I'm from France, from Toulouse, CNRS, and working in an INSERM unit on epidemiology and public health. I don't want to talk about French initiatives. I would like just to mention an EU project that finished a year ago called FAIR+. And it was funded by the European Commission under the Innovative Medicine Initiative, where all consortia are consortia with public research and big pharma, usually, or at least pharmaceutical industry, as it is related to medicines. And the Commission had realized that many of the data that were generated during these previous IMI projects were never reused. And mainly because there was intellectual property on them and a number of protection put in place. And the idea was that both the Commission and the enterprises realized that many of the data could actually be open, and that was good for them, for their reputation, for their the use of what they had produced, and just certain part had to be protected in a valorization classical way. And this project was intended to help a number of IMI projects, 20 actually, to choose and make their data fair, which doesn't mean that they are all open. There are conditions. But I think this initiative and this experience, also from the point of view of pharma industry, could be interesting in your work and future working group, I hope. And I have to mention that the team, the research team I am in, is led by a lawyer.
Yeah, thank you. I just say to Stephanie that if she wants to speak, to answer or say something, she can. Yeah, I think we can. Yeah.
I'm not sure. That's good. And then you're in the computer.
Yeah, we have Stephanie.
Okay, great.
Stephanie, you're on screen.
Yes, I'm here. I'm listening, and I will not hesitate if I need to react. Thanks.
Great.
Or answer questions.
Great. That's very interesting. Thank you for this testimony and use case. Very, very sensitive in the medicine area and for this data. The subject is really this. That means what of the data have we to protect and not to open, and what data can we open because they can be reused or shared and yeah, that's reasonable management that I say.
Yes. Hello, my name is Christoph Bruch. I'm working for Helmholtz Association. It's Germany's biggest research organization. We have an open science policy, and within that policy, we have that famous phrase, as open as possible, as closed as necessary. And this phrase also provoked a discussion within Helmholtz. I have to be more specific, actually, in the various Helmholtz centers. The organization is set up of legally independent centers, and they all have their technology transfer departments. So people wondered about how to deal with that sentence, with that policy. And since then, all centers have developed a knowledge transfer strategy that encompasses open science. So from the point of view of Helmholtz, we can have technology transfer and open science, and we need to have individual decision-making processes to solve problems that may occur in individual cases, of course. So we don't believe that there will be a general rule that can be applied. And my personal comment to the discussion we had here so far is that we should not overemphasize legal aspects. I think we need a lot of flexibility, but, and then I come back to the legal. It may be important to claim IP in order to keep things open, because if you do not claim IP, someone else may, with less good intentioned. Saying all this, which sounds so sweet, I do see risks in cooperation, but I don't see the risks so much in making available, for example, data. But personally, at this point, I think the main risk is that commercial actors will try to take over services in the research infrastructure, research data infrastructure that are essential, and become gatekeepers and make money out of that. That is, from my perspective, the risk, not the usage of individual data.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Tycho Hofstra from the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam. And within Amsterdam, we have the ICSA, the Innovation Exchange Office, who takes care of most communication between private companies and other institutions for both the university hospitals as well as the University of Amsterdam. So it's bundled all in one. As a data steward, the main thing we come up to is that there are struggles, as you say, with IP, and certainly in licensing, if we're talking about Creative Commons, because multiple times with some goodwill, researchers, they used a CC BY, and then they thought, oh wait, no, because I'm working with another party, perhaps I need to make it non-commercial. And then they already did that, and then all hell broke loose, of course. Yeah. So my general question is, where do we step in this process to make sure that these cooperation, that this goes well, to say so, because mopping it up afterwards is almost impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Both you both have a question of the level. We perhaps we do have collective or individual level to decide what we have to do with data sets or softwares, and individual level is very flexible, because we can decide what to do with this person and in her context with these data sets, but etc. But collective level is always still interesting, and relevant, I think. But collective level, what does it mean? Does it mean the establishment, the organization, institution, public or private, public institution, for example, or national level or European level, for example? I don't have the answer, but we have to, I think, we have to think about this, about the great level of governance, because we have to decide what governance to applying to data sets or softwares. And we have to think about what level is a good level. Perhaps reflections with European Commission, or perhaps with an organization like Codata, or I don't know, or at each national level in Europe. But what is it beyond Europe? There is here an international community here in RDA, and we have to think beyond, I think. That's yeah.
This time I have a question, not a comment. You had a slide showing, well, the nightmare of valorization officers being faced with apparently contradictory requirements. And there is a lot, I think, not only in France, in many places, of education for young researchers, for PhD students on valorization on one side, and now since a number of years on open science. And these two kinds of education or modules or whatever are usually not related to each other. And I was wondering if in the group you wish to set up, that could be one of the aims, to produce common shared educational material for both the open science aspect and the valorization aspect, because that is clearly lacking.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for this question. And Stephanie is.
Yes, that's a pretty good idea. But we are still a step ahead, because we need to be able to explain them how both of the open science on one side and the valorization on the other side will be able to cooperate. And that's where we stand now with Agnès and with the members of the Curie network. How will we do that? How will we make things happen? And all you said before about analyzing each case. I haven't seen if you're the same. This is the same person who spoke now and who's from the CNRS and talked about the medicine example, but it is quite an interesting example, because it shows that each case will be different and it will have to be analyzed from each part. On the one end, the open science, and on the other end, the valorization parts. And I think there are many ways to make valorization, and it can be a question of commercialization, but it can be let's say the return on investment can be something else than money. And these are things that needs to be discussed too. And also, one thing that happens in France now is that you spoke about PhD students who are sensibilized on open science and on valorization. But before that, what we see now is that there are open science directions that are created in the public research organizations, and they are not talking to valorization, which is quite, like you can understand, problem. And that's also what we are working on now on the group.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
yeah. Do you want me to bring the microphone?
I'm wondering if there's two different ways of looking at valorization in relation to open science, and one is those companies and startups using data, and I'm thinking of the sort of EC's sense of open science and return on investment, and that, you know, startups and industry are included, and innovation is that. And then there's sort of valorization by publishers, which I think is often in opposition to open science, or it is at the moment. It needn't be. And whether that the two types of valorization need to be treated separately and distinguished. It's an open question, so I don't know who that would go to
answer. And can you just for me repeat the question?
Yeah, so
sure.
So to give you an example, we have so I'm from publishing. I've been with all sorts of different publishers. So CC BY is applied by some publishers and fully open access publishers. There's ND licenses applied by other publishers to the literature and to sometimes the data and supplementary information. Then there are also CC/NC BY licenses applied to that scholarly content. And if you view any scholarly literature as data in and of itself, the text as data, then in a way, publishers are not necessarily complying with what's required from open license. And moreover, they sometimes ask authors to transfer copyright, even where they've, there is an official author copyright. And then if there's an NC license, that copyright is then transferred to the publisher, just in case there are any commercial returns for that. And so maybe it's just part of the same issue, and I'm getting down to a too granular level. But how do we create the environment for publishers to take the actions required to see the benefits of open science, where they see it all as a commercial conflict potentially at the moment?
Yeah, that's a question that we can integrate in our group of interest. If we would create a group of interest after this BoF, that would be there is some element for an answer with the the plan S,
Yes,
and there is some element of answer, but that's not always applied, and not everywhere.
That's right. And it also doesn't involve just commercial actors, but also scholarly societies, which are not for profit, and also doing that.
Thank you. So to bring in another country perspective to the discussion, I'm Heidi Laine from CSC IT Center for Science from Finland, and I think this valorization discussion or one angle of it is very actual in Finland as well. CSC is a national high performance computing center. We also provide research data management solutions mainly for the academic community, but our policies allow collaboration with commercial actors as well. And this is actually something that the new government in Finland is very much pushing. They would like to see a big increase in this RD and I activities between collaboration between the academic and public sector. But one of the things that I feel like we're struggling there with is understanding the business perspective and their ways of working and their kind of realities. And I feel like in this discussion, the voice of the business side is missing a bit. I don't know if there's anyone in the room representing that perspective. So going forward with this activity at RDA, I mean, I feel like we would, CSC and Finland more broadly would be very interested in being engaged, but it would be really, we would really benefit from having the business side participation as well, because that's where the gaps are, at least for us, understanding that side, their priorities.
I think that Stephanie, you can perhaps react on this.
React and answer. Yes, of course, I can hear that we miss maybe a point of view. And if we would decide to go further, I could bring some of my members who could be more specific than me about the business solutions they use every day. It would be possible.
I don't want to monopolize, but I just want to mention that there is an RDA interest group where I happen to be one of the co-leaders, which is called SHARC, Sharing, Rewards and Credit. And that is mainly oriented on academic evaluation of research for valorizing in this domain the open science activities. but it's not restricted to that. And I think that the things you mentioned, that there is not only monetary valorization of data, is actually addressed in this group and would benefit from your input or your colleagues' input. So we are doing for the moment the recommendation out of the previous work this group did. And we are searching for people to input on this recommendation before they are finalized. So I wanted to ask you if we could contact you for that.
Yes.
Well, it's just a command. Our starting discussion gave me the feeling that finally these considerations and these questions are raised already in many countries. I believe even from those who are not attending here, and it deserves probably to try to do some landscape analysis, probably helped by RDA team who are already used to at least, as the example that already has been cited from Helmut or from, to see how these topics are already addressed or not in our different countries, and having this as a starting point to see how we can probably to see how we can address them in a common way, if it's possible, of course.
So cartography. I don't know in English.
Yeah, a landscape.
Mapping.
Or mapping. So
yeah,
just an idea.
Very good idea. It's a big work, I think, but
I think we can be helped by RDA people. At least to give us maybe some contact points or some people who are, to whom we can forward doing the survey in there. Because if not, we'll address the problem from not a widely audience to at least start with the critical points in mind and to see how we can address them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Hilary, you would.
What inspired by the last intervention. Hi, my name is Paula Diaz. I'm from Chile, Latin America. And I just want to give another perspective regarding the conversation, which is like I'm the executive director of the Data Observatory in Chile, which is a public-private academic institution, which works with big data sets. So we are trying to push the conversation to open data in science in Chile. We started with, but we have 4 like fields that we are working with data sets. First of all was astronomy, because we had a lot of data regarding astronomy. The other one was natural resources, social problems. The other like line of data sets provision, and the last one is Earth observation. And actually, I was in charge listening to the 3 of you. I really appreciate the presentations, because I was in charge of the implementation of the science ministry in Chile. And PI and open source research and open source data, it's a conversation that we are trying to begin there. I mean, we just created the science ministry a couple of years ago, or 2019. So now it's very accurately the conversation. And I think we can learn a lot regarding the RDA experience to reinforce collaboration between public, private, and academia collaboration. Well, just wanted to put the Latin American point in the conversation.
Thank you.
I'll just stand up if you don't mind. But what's your name? Sorry. Paula. I'm glad you spoke first, you know, because I was going to say that if there is an interest, of course, that we've heard from Europe so far, and of course RDA is global, nothing stopping anybody from doing anything, but within RDA we would come to the barrier of, well, actually it needs to be a global, an area of global interest. But so I'm glad you spoke, because I was going to say, are there no non-Europeans who can give us their perspective on it? But what we can do in the Research Data Alliance, of course, is when what happens. I think you may have been told, but it's useful maybe for others. So the birds of a feather, the idea is that, you know, this is a test bed to see, is it useful? But of course, not everyone is present. Maybe they're in other rooms. They couldn't join online or whatever. So we need to also support you to test to see. So you could go for the next step and say, okay, there are ideas around an interest or a working group, depending on what the scope or the focus are. Maybe the shark could be the interest group, and then there could be a working group about something more specific. And we can test it, and we can try and support to get to see where the international interest is. I mean, that's part of some of the work that we as the Secretariat I ask my colleagues to do. So that is something as well to bear in mind, to give the rest of the community that aren't present now an opportunity perhaps to have their say, or at least say, yep, I would be interested in that. So, Nina, yeah.
Thank you. I have a specific example to share, but I think leading into it, I think it may be interesting to reflect on what the scope of a group might be. It started very much from that academic technology transfer piece and how you reconcile that with open science. But I think Hilary's talk was more about how we can partner with industry to make progress together. So I wonder if the umbrella is about public-private partnerships in different forms, not just the valorization that comes through academic research, but other forms. And this leads me on to my specific example. I work at an organization called the Cambridge Crystallographic Data Center. If you look at us today, what we strive to do is make the individual data sets that get deposited with us freely available. How we make our revenue is by licensing software specifically to industry that takes advantage of the aggregation of that data and helps apply it to problems relevant to them. And that was a model that we sort of had to evolve when the original grant funding that we got sort of dried up, and we were lucky that industry were interested in our data. But I think that's another way you can think about balancing, making the sort of raw outputs of research available in an open way, and then thinking about value-added services that may bring in revenue from other sources. It's not easy. The sort of phrase gatekeeping was mentioned before, and we do get accused of that because those value-added services aren't necessarily freely and openly available to everyone. But if we got publicly funded, maybe that argument would go away. And I think, yeah, it's about how we can engage. I'd say it's how we can engage the private sector in the round in sort of the opportunities and the challenges that we face. I think interesting to reflect on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. We have some in France that I understood. We have some examples of good balance between valorization and open science in the software domain. In particular, we have some public institutions that valorize software results, but there are free software, so they can apply the both requirements to the same object, but some in a different way to valorize and to open. It's that very interesting in the software sector, public scientific domain.
Yeah, it reminds me, I think, throughout the UK, there are various initiatives, even some driven out of academic labs, some may be sort of more concertedly funded, where academics have produced software. They'll make it freely available to their academic counterparts. If industry want to use it, they'll ask them to pay. And, you know, we shouldn't be afraid of finding ways to get industry to contribute money to things that they are otherwise going to take advantage of. And this is one of the challenges of open data, isn't it? We put everything out there. There's nothing stopping industry capitalizing on it. Nothing stopping the publishers taking all the open data and sort of creating more gatekeepers as well. So let's try and engage them on the pathway so that they're giving back, not just taking.
I might be naive, but I mean, my interactions with the private sector are actually that they want to do something often too. And I think it is up to us to give them ways to do it, as we said, in a valuable way. So if that's, it's the IP, keep the IP, but whatever, and we can find solutions. So I'm not sure if it's for the scope of this particular group, but I do believe that even the publishers with this, all of these new ideas, they themselves, they have a business model. Business is business, we know, no? I mean, that's how the world works. There are economic organizations and they need to make profit and things like that. We need to help them to show them how it is by preserving too. So that's my opinion now. But as I said, I may be naive.
Anybody to ask something or comment online? No comment.
I might add one more thing because Heidi did say it before and she's right. So we could also help. I didn't specify that, but I think it would be valuable to get some of those stakeholders we're talking about, but whose point of view, Stephanie rightly says, is not here today. So perhaps we could make a special effort to. I would be very surprised if Oracle were not interested in coming to talk about it and to be involved. They can also, they're quite open, and but there could be lots of other organizations that we could bring in or in some way involve if that's what you would like to do.
Yes.
Another person from France, I'm sorry, Nicolas Larousse from Humanim. I have two questions, a very simple one and a very more complicated one. The first one is, we are speaking about, I'm working for an infrastructure, we are dealing with data, but not only with data, now it's metadata. Do you have a different approach for dealing with data and metadata? Because generally speaking, when you say it's closed as necessary, you don't close metadata. And now metadata is quite, I hope it's a value in itself. So do you have a specific approach to metadata?
I personally.
In your project, in your view of dealing with private sector.
To answer, it's important to say that as legal aspect, there is no difference of treatment between metadata and data. But the rules are not so precise in the research and innovation sector. Law are very large and very they not distinguish between metadata and data. So in this group, we can easily, in my opinion, we can easily integrate the problematic of metadata too, because there is no different answer between both objects for me. But there can be another opinions on this.
From what I heard here in French valorization, there's no difference in the treatment for now.
Yeah.
And now a very Eurocentric question. Sorry for the rest of the world. You are speaking about sharing data with people from the public, private, and beyond. What do you have a view of what is going at the European level with the data spaces, which the main goal is to share data with the citizen, which means private sector, citizens. I'm not sure that citizens are going to use really the data, but do you have a view on that? Because maybe there could be in return something that change in our level in research landscape in a way.
We have to deal with the European rules, and the European rules are changing at this time. And we have some interesting new texts, new rules that require to private sector to open data too. But in such conditions with security and etc. But we have a regulation in progress to which will facilitate for the private sector to open their data. And that's very interesting, I think, to analyze the open science situation regarding this new texts, new rules, new regulation, European regulation. But it's something which is European, like as you said.
Well, distinction between metadata and data. Maybe there's legally speaking, maybe there is no difference, but I just wanted to tell that at our facilities, again, like Soleil, we do a distinction because we have 3 engagements. One is to give the ability to researchers to embargo their data at least 3 or 5 years. We also have an engagement that we can keep their data at least 10 years, but the metadata are supposed to be preserved indefinitely, which has its impact.
Yes, the durations of embargo is a very interesting question. And I have a question. You said that on private agreements, let's say in agreements, which precise the duration of embargo or openness, and
it depends.
It's agreement.
This is treated case by case.
Yeah. So agreements.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. So, if there's no more question, we can stop here our session, and just the time for me to thank again our two speakers, Stephanie and Hilary. For me, that was very important that you were on my side. And thank you, Laurence, too, for your help. And thank you for your presence here at this session. And hoping that that will be productive and fructifying.
So can I just say,
Yeah.
Agnes, the next steps would be if you and Stephanie and based on the discussion decide to take it forward, right? We would obviously broadcast it and we can make it available, and then the people that were here. Just to note that when you're online, it's easier because we can put the Google Doc into the links. But from the RDA program, there is the link directly to the Google Docs. I'm not sure about the Whova, but maybe. But please go in there and say that you were here if you're interested, so you can put your name and surname and your email, because you will be the people, of course, that maybe will be followed up with more directly. So, of course, as I said, there are many people here that might also be interested, but they are more or less the next steps that we can follow. And on our wonderful website, oh gosh, sorry, we have a new one in progress, but it's really slow coming, so don't get too excited.
Great.
Oh, I've been saying anytime soon since last year, but it will come soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so we can do that.